Hello, everybody. I hope you're doing wonderful today. I am Fabiola Baughman. I am a shaman, and I am here to share messages from Mother Earth. Uh, so today, Mother Earth wanted me to talk to you about abundance. What is abundance? A lot of people, when they think of abundance, they think of keeping their job, making money to provide for their family. But Mother Earth has been teaching me about abundance is that it has very little to do with money, very little to do with money, because abundance is something that comes from within. It's something that we carry inside. And I've known many people that have that are very lucky to have a lot of money, but they truly don't have abundance. And there is a difference between money wealth, and true abundance. So, what is the difference? So, when you feel abundant, you don't, you, first of all, you feel safe. Okay. You know that even when you don't have money, you're always going to have food, you're going to have shelter, you're going to have protection over yourself. So, there's that difference. But when you have money, excuse me, when you have money, sometimes you don't feel safe because fear is in your life. So abundance and fear, they're kind of opposite in many ways. Kind of like fear and love, they are the opposite. Abundance and fear don't go together because part of feeling abundance comes from feeling safe. Okay, from feeling safe, from being loved and being protected. So I remember when I was growing up, my parents were very careful with money. And I remember once, and I was very conscious of it. So I needed to be respectful, not to ask for money very often. And I remember getting home from school. It was Christmas break. Actually, in Peru, it's the end of the school year. So it's kind of like our summer break. And I got home and I was so excited because it was going to be Christmas soon. And it was summer, in the Southern Hemisphere, it's not winter, it's summer. And it was time to set up the Christmas tree. So my mom said, "Well, pull out the Christmas tree, start decorating." So as I start opening the boxes, which our Christmas tree was very little. It wasn't anything like we have here in the United States. It was tiny. And I start opening the boxes and I find a lot of broken ornaments and they didn't look very nice. So they look mismatched and they just weren't good. So I was just kind of frustrated because I knew my first rule is don't ask for money, right? And I said, well, okay, how can I make this turn the situation around? So I went into my mother's sewing kit and I found yellow ribbon. So I started making ribbons, little ribbons, and I put them in the tree, and then my tree was decorated. And I feel that for me, it was very special because now I get to tell you the story. First of all, I was probably 8 years old, or no, I might have been like 10 years old. And then secondly, because I realized that I just have to use what I have. And in the process, I get to be creative and I get to enjoy the process to create something beautiful, not perfect, but beautiful. And I get to make something with my hands to decorate the Christmas tree. So that to me was a true moment of abundance because I realized that the abundance of making my tree within my standards to make the tree look beautiful was within myself, within the ability of me being able to make something beautiful out of basically nothing, right? And that taught me a lesson that always there's a chance to make something better with a few resources that you have. Okay. So abundance is really something that lives within you, that you can learn, and something that you can welcome into your life. I always hear many stories of people that want to have more, even though they have millions in the bank. But that is not true abundance. That is actually misery, because they will never feel um, completely rich because they don't have that ability to feel safe, to feel protected, to feel that that fear doesn't rule their life anymore. And abundance comes from that ability to feel safe and to be able to transform your world no matter what the circumstances are. So think about that for a moment and see how you can bring abundance into your life. One of the things that I always admire about the people that work the land, the farmers or the peasants, is that they truly know what abundance is from Mother Earth. Because um, when I go into the highlands and I see the farmers living from the land, they build their homes with adobe, which is comes from the earth. And actually, the adobe homes, I don't understand why in South America specifically, buildings are made of concrete. Maybe because they're more stable and they can be stronger. But a lot of people in the Andes says, "Well, I'm gonna build my home with concrete." Well, that is a mistake because if you build your home with concrete in the highlands when it's super cold at night, then your house is going to be super cold, right? But when we use the natural resources that we have available, like the mud, the adobe bricks, your home was going to be fully insulated. So when we think about kind of like I guess the version of let's match the Joneses, right? Let's use the materials that rich people will use instead of using what makes sense. We're too worried about how we look to another person instead of thinking what's more practical. We actually make the mistake to bring negatives into our life, like not having a very well insulated home, and that is a lack of abundance, a lack of understanding what is best for your family. So that is very important. And sometimes we make choices in our life that don't not the best choices for our well-being, and that is a lack of abundance. Okay. Um, so as I was saying, part of feeling abundant is to have no fear and to feel safe because whatever you have in front of you can be a very useful tool and you just didn't realize that you had it. Um, so let's see. What time in your life, think of a time in your life in which you felt like you needed a lot of money, but you really didn't. So let's think about that for a moment. You know, that perhaps you wanted to buy, I don't know, a car, a car, but you really didn't. Uh, because, okay, let's say, we want to buy a fancy car. Okay, what makes more sense to buy a fancy car that you're going to pay a lot of, registration and insurance and so on and so forth? When in reality, you can buy a cheaper car or you can buy two cars that are not fancy and it actually provides for your wife and your child or your wife and yourself. And we make choices in which everybody gets what they need, not necessarily what they want. So abundance relates to what you need, not necessarily what you want. So there's a difference that we need to understand what is that we truly need, not what we think we need, right? So, and this is the lack of abundance in society has a lot to do with the level of pressure and expectations that society puts on us, because we have to keep up with whoever, whatever reason we when we feel that somebody has more than us, it shows something wrong, that something might be wrong with us. When in reality, that person is just showing her own abundance that comes from themselves, from within themselves. So in the future, when you feel like inadequate, I want you to think of why a particular situation is showing you that you're inadequate. And instead of reaching out for what makes you feel not great, reach out what makes you feel good. So when you start focusing on what really makes you feel good, what makes you feel happy and fulfilled, then you're focusing on the abundance of within yourself. And as you focus more on the abundance that resides within yourself, you'll bring more abundance to your life. We grow in our gardens what we focus on. If we focus on lack and fear, that's what we're going to grow. But if we focus on abundance and true wealth, which comes from within, then that's what's going to grow in our garden. So see the abundance around you, the love around you, the happiness around you. Don't focus on the fear. Focus on what you need to grow. Focus on what you need. And that's going to bring even more and more abundance to your life. So I hope this was inspirational. And if you like, please click subscribe, and I'll see you next time. All my love to you. Bye bye.